first, you need to tap into those core, you need to learn how to tap into those core masculine qualities that I talked about in sexual value. You need to learn how to tap into them and how to cultivate them so that you can learn to really be, let's dumb it down and say a man. Because a lot of guys are very confused as to what it means to be a man. And that's why Jordan Peterson became so popular. He's essentially helping guys become men when they're so lost, you know, and he's saying adopt responsibility, tell the truth, stand up straight, you know, some basic self-development principles, right? So, you know, there's just a lot of confusion in society now as to what it means to be a man. Not really taught that in school. There's all this, you know, talk of rights, and freedoms, and feminist movements. It's just there's a lot of conflicting forces at play. There's the cultural elements, you know, our own cultural elements, whether it's your Chinese upbringing or your immigrant experience. You know, all these forces at play that are creating this confusion as to what it means to be a man. Not to mention the digital age, video games that allow you to essentially just remove yourself from real life and escape it in video games or social media, right? I had a guy that I was living with at some point who was a video games developer, and he was just in his room the whole time. He never came out of his room. He was so sheltered and so afraid to step into the, you know, the outside world, essentially. He was so far down the wrong rabbit hole. It's scary to even think about. Basically, the first step, you know, that I tell guys is you have to learn what it means to be a man. In the past, we used to have masculine rites of passage. There were different manifestations of what it means to be a man, whether it was in Spartan times versus, I don't know, the medieval times versus the Renaissance, Industrial Revolution, 50s, post-World War II, modern age, etc., right? But the core masculine qualities have always prevailed. Decisiveness, resourcefulness, core confidence, dominance, assertiveness, independence. When you start cultivating those qualities and acting in congruence with them, they will also be conveyed in your honest signals so that people will get a sense that this guy is a man, right? It's a real man who adopts responsibility, takes ownership for his shit, communicates clearly and honestly, assertively about what he wants, doesn't resort to any petty behavior. That's the first step. Then people and women and people in general start seeing you as someone that they deem attractive and respectable. Women have no respect. People have no respect for guys who are not really men. It's almost like immediately it's like, this guy's just, he's not a real man. He can't even, you know, he can't do X, Y, Z. And the same thing for a woman. And a lot of women end up in these relationships where, you know, where they settle for these adult children almost, you know, that are kind of good enough on paper, kind of stable, you know, it's okay. But then they resent the men. They resent the men for not having the kind of qualities, the kind of core masculine qualities that they would like. And it becomes this, and you know, it forces the woman to start adopting her own masculine traits, and she doesn't like that. She doesn't want to have to become the man. So she resents the man, she resents herself for it. Then you start, you know, you start meeting women. You start understanding, you start going for things. You start understanding what you like, what you don't like. You start cultivating those qualities. You're just gonna have core confidence overnight, right? It takes time. And pickup is not the only way to cultivate that. There's other ways, there's other avenues. Doing anything that puts you out of your comfort zone, anything that pushes you, anything that gets you to confront your fears, right? To slay those metaphorical dragons. That's going to help shape those characteristics. And so, but pickup is obviously a very good avenue for it because it's so terrifying to get this raw immediate feedback. Yeah. And so, you know, you move along and you start cultivating these qualities, and you start over time seeking out women, because right now, you know, you're going to want to let's say in an ideal world. I mean, obviously you're at an age where you do want something more meaningful, maybe sooner. And therein lies the paradox, almost, where, yeah, you want something more meaningful. I mean, I think we all do. But I feel like guys who are older, it's more pronounced simply because, well, I'm older by society standards. I don't have time to go like mess around and have a bunch of one-night stands. The sex drive is not as high. So they're more inclined to just find something more meaningful sooner. You also, like I mentioned before, need to really focus on that growth. You need to cultivate those qualities. And generally, often, that's done outside of a relationship. You don't want to, because inside of a relationship, you're blinded, you're comfortable, you're not actually going to be forced to go and step up. So you do need some time to work on yourself. And you're going to meet women, various kinds of women, and you don't necessarily need to look for relationship material right away. Okay, I think that's a misconception that guys have, and I think it's also fear-based. I had a client on the last boot camp, and he was being all particular about who he wanted to approach and not approach, and I knew that it was fear-based. I sensed it, and I'm like, man, you're not picking. You know, this girl is this, or this girl doesn't feel like she's on her purpose. This one's not
choosing a wife.
Yeah, I told him, look, man, you're not choosing your next girlfriend. You're working on yourself, and you're seeing what's out there, and I'm sure you could have fun hanging out with a bunch of these girls, and how do you even know? Maybe you'll really click with them. But again, I know a lot of it was very fear-based, where, you know, certain girls kind of intimidated him, and he was like, oh, she's not for me. It's so convenient to slip into that kind of thinking. Guys think, oh, well, I should only be dating a certain kind of woman, or blah, blah, blah. First of all, you don't know what's out there. Okay? You don't know what's out there, number one. So it's arrogant to think that you do. And I'm saying not you generally, but to someone who's not very experienced. And you'll find that you'll learn a lot of different things from a variety of different types of women. The nerdy girl might teach you to get more in touch with your nerdy side or your goofy side, okay? Maybe you'll also learn that the nerdy girl is quite kinky as well. And maybe that's common with a bunch of nerdy girls. They've got this inner kinkiness and that you can like bring out. Maybe the cold and aloof model girl, you know, will teach you how to be more nonchalant, and will teach you how to step up and be very assertive, because she's been with so many guys that have given her so much validation that you'll recognize that you're only going to register if you really step it up. Otherwise, you're just some next doormat that she's going to walk all over. Maybe she'll teach you that. Maybe the girl with tattoos will teach you how to have more edge and how to be more raw in your interactions because of her raw, witty sense of humor. It's amazing how much you can learn and take away from these different women that you meet, and, you know, and people in general, right? Everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own unique personality. You'll start to understand what you like, what you don't like. You'll start to learn new things about yourself. You start to connect with these new parts of you. It's like, wow, this woman, you know, forced me to do this or helped me connect with this. And over time, you'll have just a better perception of, one, what's out there, how things work. It'll help you reassert some of these core masculine qualities. It just basically helps you really see the forest for the trees. And I'm tying this back with your question, you know, because it's not a simple question.
I see where it's going.
You see where it's going, right? So you'll learn all this stuff, and, you know, maybe over time you'll have, maybe some of it will be a one-night stand, some of it will be a couple of dates, some of these interactions will lead to a little, you know, fling or liaison, whatever you want to call it. Some will lead to maybe an open relationship, not an open relationship, an actual relationship. So you'll have all these reference experiences, and you'll learn how to be more genuine. You'll learn how to communicate better. You'll learn how to manage relationships better. You become, you know, a better man, a better version of yourself, and you know what's out there, and you know what you like. And that's the combination you're looking for. So that then, one, you recognize a woman that you think is quality when you see one. And two, you are equipped to navigate that relationship and to embark on it and navigate on it. And that's the combination you want to be able to have, to be able to manage long-lasting relationships. And when I say congruent, you're also not potentially distracted by certain things. Like, you know, for some guys it can be career. Let's say they're at a point in their lives where career is a big priority, and then they have to like figure some stuff out, work on themselves. Or it can be in your case where you're still kind of figuring out who you are. So when you have that congruence and you're not kind of distracted or weighed down by things, you can be fully available. David Ada talks about this. You can be 100% there for this relationship to really blossom. And hopefully the woman is too. And you have this interdependent, and ideally it's an interdependent connection where you're both independent, autonomous unit. You're not codependent. You're not there because you need one another. You're two solid independent units, but now the fusion of those two worlds is great and harmonious, and you can learn from one another and push each other, and it's interdependent. That's kind of like where you want to get. So that's, in a nutshell, a recipe for how to find and build lasting relationships.